Good morning. I'm sorry for the delay in this meeting starting. We have been waiting for somebody to join, but they have now been given ample opportunity to join the meeting, so we will be starting. So I'm Councillor Nikki Brennan, and I will be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee C of Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can all of you please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also please turn off your cameras, with the exception of committee members, unless you are the person speaking? I can hear a little bit of an echo.
It's Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please make sure that their mobile phone is on silent and ensure that they are situated in an environment which is free from distractions or unnecessary noise. Thank you for that. I am speaking slowly and clearly so everybody can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of the subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these type of meetings. I also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. Members are reminded that they must declare any relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, members must not take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. So can I welcome you to a hearing for an application in respect of Holloway Club, 89 Holloway Head, Birmingham, B1 1QP, and I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I am Councillor Nikki Brennan and I am chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Diane Donaldson.
Morning, Chair.
And Councillor Mary Locke.
Morning, Chair.
Also present in the meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer Bapinder Nangra.
Morning, Chair.
Committee Manager, Meeting Manager Errol Wilson.
Good morning, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampile.
Good morning, Chair.
Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant, so Duncan Craig.
Good morning, Chair. I'm here with the applicant, Mr. Lee, and his wife, T, who actually is going to be subject to the licence being granted the DPS, subject to you not excluding her as DPS. She's here because Mr. Lee's English, he understands. I obviously have a lot of clients who English isn't the first language. I know he understands what's being said, but he doesn't necessarily convey English as well as his wife does. So she's here to help out if required.
Would they both like to say, just identify themselves for the camera, if that's okay? Good morning.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. I'll just swing this round.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's T.
Okay. And I will go to next those making representations. Do we have anyone on the call from House Birmingham? No, okay. So we'll carry on. Could I ask if any persons making representation, oh, there's an unknown user. Maybe that's them. Do we have anyone in the meeting from House Birmingham? If so, identify yourself. Okay, I don't think we do. So could I ask if any persons making representations wish to withdraw their representation at this stage of the hearing?
Chair, could the person who has come in identify themselves, please? A name is showing on my screen. Rudy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's me. So I actually live adjacent to the building.
Okay, have you put in a representation?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay.
Which one is
Errol,
it?
is that
Chair.
confirmed that that's the yeah?
Chair, I think Mr. Tiara had put in an individual representation, and I think he's representing House Birmingham. I don't know if he wants to confirm that.
Well, sorry, just to confirm, we live next door to the property, right? So it's myself.
So you're not here to represent House Birmingham?
No, it's myself. I think that they may have also objected, being the agent involved in renting this property.
Okay.
Could I please just clarify which representation it is, what page it's on? Bhupinder, is that possible?
It's Appendix 1.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will carry on now. Could I ask if any persons making representation wish to withdraw their representation at this stage of the hearing? No. Okay. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may, at my discretion, amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We will be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons... Bap, I'll come to you. You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, Mr. Tiara, he emailed from the email address for House Birmingham and said, yes, I will attend. So he needs to clarify if he's representing them or is he representing himself as Appendix 1. Because he actually emailed from the House Birmingham email address rather than his own individual one.
Right. Okay. Well, that may well have been a mistake. I do also own the company, so I mean, I can represent either. Whichever
Okay.
is.
Just needed clarification for all parties involved. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear, who are you representing? Are you representing yourself as an individual, or are you representing the company?
Well, both. But I mean, either or. I actually live in the property that's adjacent to this place, and
Okay.
it's my company that's also sorted the place out. So.
Okay, I will. Okay, now we're clear with that. I will carry on. So we'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons. Can we just make sure all microphones are off, please? One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go onto chat. If you do not have access to chat function for any reason, please use the raise your hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all now confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name? Officers will also type their job title, and the meeting will not proceed until you have done so. Thank you. I think that is everybody. I don't think anyone has dialed in using telephone. So with the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your cameras off unless you are the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may at my discretion ask everyone to turn their camera off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone being able to hear and be heard. Does anybody wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point, typing speak into the chat function or using the raise your hand function now. Okay, thank you. I will now briefly outline the procedure which we'll be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present the report. Then the applicant and their representatives will be asked to present their case, and we're asking that this can be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, we will be allowing approximately 20 minutes for this part of the hearing. Can I ask that all parties to speak as slowly and clearly and as they possibly can, because officers will be taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any point it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. When questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, please signify this by using the chat facility on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I have not noticed the messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate time. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. This chat will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they had just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I remind everyone to please mute their microphones and turn off your cameras when you are not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in the meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice in a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of this meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event the members need to clarify at any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will make their decision. The members will then make their decision, and notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 working days. So I hope that is reasonably straightforward. So with that, can the licensing officer present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Boyle applied on the 8th of August 2021 for the grant of a premises licence for Holloway Club 89 Holloway Head, Birmingham, B1 1QP. The purpose of the report is to consider representations that have been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises to operate from 10 AM until 3 AM Monday to Thursday and 10 AM until 7 AM Friday to Sunday. The provision of regulated entertainment consisting of live music, recorded music and the performances of dance to operate indoors only from 10 AM until 3 AM Monday to Thursday and 10 a.m. until 7 a.m. Friday to Sunday. To permit the provision of late night refreshment to operate indoors only from 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. Monday to Thursday and 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. Friday to Sunday. The premises is to remain open to the public from 10 a.m. until 3:30 a.m. Monday to Thursday and 10 a.m. until 7:30 a.m. Friday to Sunday. Other dates and times are specified in the application form. Representations have been received from other persons, which are attached at appendices 1 to 6. The application is attached at appendix 7, with the site location plans attached at appendix 8. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the license in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the license subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the license any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the license as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite the applicant to make their case, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a background to this one because it's not it's not a straightforward situation. It's quite, in fact, it's a situation I've never encountered before in my 9 years of practice. You'll have seen, and I hope you got the message, not for you to have read the lease. There's no need for that to happen at all. But you'll have seen the supporting documents that I sent through yesterday. I was first contacted by a solicitor at ASR Advantage Solicitors in November 2019 about these premises, because what had happened was the leaseholder, which is a company called Amari One, had fallen into arrears with the rent. The landlord had issued a winding up petition and had initiated forfeiture proceedings against the company in relation to the lease. It went to court and the winding up petition was dismissed as a consequence of it being satisfied, and therefore, and there has been some confusion around this, the lease was never actually forfeited. So the company has been in occupation throughout the currency of the lease, which commenced in 2012 until now. The company has changed names. I'm going to take you through the chronology shortly. But during that time, the company held the license. During that time, in around the July of 2019, the landlord had transferred the license into their own name. They'd effectively, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but in my opinion, the landlord's been naughty about the way they've gone about it. They've created a picture that I don't believe reflected the true position, and accordingly, the license was transferred into the landlord into their name. Now, I was then instructed in November to try and unravel this, which you'll have seen the emails that I sent back and forth, which included emails to Joanne as well. I'm sure she'll remember this case. And then sort of things ground to a halt, as so many things did. The early part of the following year, obviously, we all know what happened. Premises were closed, and accordingly, I guess this problem wasn't really a live issue anymore. And then, obviously, we get to the end of this latest lockdown in when premises were effectively given carte blanche, give or take, to open up in the July. I was contacted by Mr. Lee. So Mr. Lee, and again, I'll go through this, has taken ownership of the company in July of this year. And he said to me, "What can I do? The license is in the landlord's name." And I said, "Well, the simple thing for you to do, you have the right to occupy the building, but by way of the lease. Section 16(1)(a) of the Licensing Act gives anyone who is carrying on a business where a premises license is in accordance with that business can apply for a license. So you've got every right to be in the building, so you can apply for the license in your own name. And so that is why we find ourselves here, because the landlord has the license in their name. The position is that on the lease itself, at page 39 in the bundle, there is what it's clause 35. So I'm going to get into a tiny bit of technical legal language now, but I think it's important that I just convey that. Every commercial lease has what's known as a quiet enjoyment clause, and actually it's frequently the only clause in there that benefits the tenant. And what a quiet enjoyment clause does, and you see it here, is effectively the landlord says, this lease gives you the right to operate your business within the permitted use of the building. As long as you comply with the terms of the lease, then we're going to let you crack on and run your business as you see fit. Accordingly, the landlord's in a bit of a difficult position, because obviously these premises were leased as a licensed business. They cannot prevent my client from operating that business as per the lease, and so accordingly they can't prevent him operating under that license. And so there is presently a DPS in situ on that other license, and I've sent a copy of that license through, and that's at page 60 in my bundle. And so, frankly, at the present arrangement is wholly unsatisfactory. You're a license holder who has no particular accountability. You have a DPS who's on there who's authorising the sale of alcohol. And so what my client is seeking to do is effectively say, I will take responsibility for the activities there. I've got a lease there. I am presently selling alcohol through that license and perfectly lawful. And that's actually not an uncommon arrangement. You have a lot of, for example, pub companies like Star Pubs and Bars and Marston's, for example, have that arrangement whereby they hold the license, and then the tenant that's in there is the DPS. It's not an unusual arrangement in that regard. But all my client is seeking to do is to have a license in his name, so that he can obviously exercise a bit more control, so that the landlord can't implied or express threats towards him that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, we'll surrender the license. He's just simply seeking to have it in his name. So taking that as a given, what I then said to him was, well, look, the present license is of some antiquity. We certainly won't be applying for any more hours than is on the present license. And in actual fact, I think it's only right and fair that the conditions on the new license, should it be granted, are more onerous than on the present license, that being licensed in the name of Hendricks, which is license number 1952. And so the application went in on that basis. I had conversations with West Midlands Fire Service, who came down and visited the premises and gave some very helpful advice about the premises. I also had conversations with Constable Reader from West Midlands Police, and they didn't make any representations once I'd explained the position to him. And then what happened, I got an email from Martin Key from Environmental Health, and with some suggested conditions on it. And I know Martin's been insanely busy recently, and anyone who knows me will know how busy I've been for the last few months. And we both actually forgot to deal with that email. We just both forgot. And so the representation period came and went. And So those conditions, and I was actually mortified when I spoke to Martin afterwards, because it's not the way I like to operate with responsible authorities. When Martin said that I'd not responded to it, but he hadn't picked up on it either, I was mortified that because I said to Martin, that's just not the way I operate. So I did say to Martin, look, there's going to be a hearing. I think it's because of these conditions would have been agreed. I think they're reasonable and they're proportionate. So the conditions I've sent through, numbers 1 to 7, are lifted from that email that Martin. I've modified 1 or 2 of them, but they essentially are the conditions. So the premises license holder could have just gone, well, tough. That's the way it goes. No rep's been made. But I spoke to him about it. I said, look, these conditions give you a framework to work with that isn't presently on the existing license. And so he said to me that he was perfectly content for these conditions to go on the license, and as I say, that's conditions 1 to 7. I then added condition 8 to the application because it just means that if this license is granted and he's operating under it, that there's no question mark about which license is being. The licensable activities are being carried on through. It will be this license, and that the other one cannot be operated at the same time. So there's no wriggle room for him to say, "Oh, well, I was actually operating on the other one." So it'll be this license that is the one as the tenant he will be operating through. I'm sorry to drop this in now, but I've only had the opportunity to speak to my client this morning through his wife about the application as it stands, subject to these conditions. And look, I said to him, look, do you need 7 o'clock in the morning? He said he doesn't need 7 o'clock. The reason that those hours are in there is simply that they replicate what is on the existing license number 1952. And so I'm going to be formally now modifying the application. Nothing in the week, so Sunday to Thursday will remain as is, but Fridays and Saturdays, late night refreshment and alcohol by retail to cease at 3 a.m. Regulated entertainment to cease at 4:30 a.m. and that's all the various strands of regulated entertainment that have been applied for within the application, with a closing time of 5 a.m. So that is significantly less actually than the present license. In addition to that, I had the chance to speak to him. He's perfectly content to have a couple of conditions around rubbish, because I noticed on the representations that reference has been made to rubbish externally. Now, some of that may not be down to the premises, some of that may be a legacy of lockdown. I don't know, but look, he spoke to me, spoke to him through his wife about this particular. So there's 2 more proposed conditions, 9 and 10. I'll read them into the record. I know that careful notes are being taken. First one is, the premises shall ensure that no waste will be left outside the premises except in the bin store to the rear of the premises. I put the word premises in there twice. I'm sure if you want to adopt it, you can perhaps tidy it up. But in fact, there's 3 premises in there. Let's change that to the license holder shall ensure that no waste will be left outside the building except in the bin store to the rear of the premises. There we go. And then the next one is that the premises will clear the area immediately in front of the building of any waste before and after it operates. So effectively, that's a requirement that before they open and when they close, they have a quick sweep of the area outside and clear any rubbish. And so those are 2 further conditions that I've only managed to take instructions on this morning. So that is the position. And just to sort of clarify, if I may, so but if I can go through my bundle. So you'll see the forfeiture notice at page 1. So that was the original one. Obviously, the lease is for 2012. In fact, let me deal with it this way, actually, if I may, because you'll see the lease, forgive me, the lease at page 10 in my bundle. You'll see the lease is between Chai Lam Wealth Management Limited and Sunset Birmingham Limited. And you'll see there on the 25th of November 2016, Sunset Birmingham Limited became Amari One Limited. The same company, the same number, which is 7779292. And so the name change, just to be clear, obviously, if I'm following the chronology through. And then if you look, if you then go back to page 53, you will see Mr. Lee there became an individual person with significant control on the 1st of July. He was involved in the business prior to that, but not actively involved. And then you'll see on page 55 in my bundle, he then became sole director of that company. So he is the controlling mind of the company. So just to be clear, just to demonstrate that he owns the company, and although it says Sunset Birmingham, it's now Amari One, and it is the same company. It's just had a name change. I remember from my days on my bars and restaurants, I would frequently change the name of the company to reflect the name of the restaurant or whatever. So that's not an unusual thing for someone to do, and perfectly routine, in fact. So you'll then see, going back then, if I may, at page, so you've got the at page 2 in my bundle, you've got the dismissal of the winding up petition, which in conjunction with that, there was no forfeiture of the lease, just to confirm that. And that the ASR Advantage, I asked them to bash up a letter to confirm that, and they've done that, which is contained at page 3. You'll then see at page 4 an email from the solicitors, which was EGL Law, which are now Knights, acting for the landlord, which I think is quite aggressive, unnecessarily so, saying, you know, your client does not possess its own premises license to enable it to operate, completely misapprehends the mechanisms of the Licensing Act. I said that in my follow-up emails, but it's clearly trying to threaten my client, basically, when he's got a lease. He's paid, you know, he's got a right to occupy the building, and so that's formed the basis of the advice I've given. So the best way of dealing with this is get a license in your own name, but there are consequences that flow from that. The consequences are he's liable, it's in his name. If there are any breaches of the license or any of the concerns that have been aired by those who've made representations, well, it is much more likely to get a result than the present satisfaction, which is frankly wholly unsatisfactory. It doesn't mean he won't carry on, by the way. If this application is refused today, it'll just carry on with the existing license. And then we get into arguments about whether the quiet enjoyment clause in the lease is engaged or not, but that will be the position. And so what I'm presenting to you today, and this is the principal point I am making, is that this will be a much more restrictive license in terms of the conditions. This will have less hours than the existing license, and it is much more likely, if the concerns that are raised by those who've made representations and they engage with, particularly with environmental health, that there is much more accountability. There is much more a line of responsibility. You can actually identify who Mr. Lee will be, the license holder, and his wife will be the DPS. And so they're putting their neck on the line and saying, well, it'll be in our name, but we are happy to take responsibility for that. So I would submit that in actual fact, for the residents, this is a better situation than the one that presently subsists, which is frankly vague, woolly, nebulous. It's just not a satisfactory state of affairs. You obviously seen the emails that myself and Joanne exchanged between pages 5 and 9. There were some other ones which dealt with the forfeiture point, but so that's why I've tackled that and said that, because the impression was given the lease has been forfeited so that simply is not correct. That is wrong. I never responded to that, Joanne, simply because I didn't have any instructions because of what that thing called COVID that we're all had to deal with in the last 18 months. So hopefully that's
Joanne, do you want to come in at all?
No, thank you, Chair. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obviously, you've got the lease, and hopefully you haven't read that through. I'm just again demonstrating his right to occupy the building, and you've seen the company's house documents, which just demonstrate the sort of chronology that I've set out, and the fact that Mr. Lee is entitled to be in there, and accordingly is perfectly proper that under section 16(1)(a) of the Licensing Act that he applies for a premises license. Just add on to that at pages 60 to 67 is the existing license, which he's been operating through the DPS, Mr. Parmjit Singh, who I've met at the premises actually. So that's the position. You can see the hours there: 7 a.m. Friday and Saturday for sale of alcohol by retail. And then if you turn then over to page 63, you'll see the conditions there are. Some of them are just meaningless. The premises will operate in accordance with all relevant legislation. What does that mean? What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. The premises will liaise and cooperate with the responsible authorities. Again, that's just completely unenforceable. What the new license will have, if it's granted, is conditions that responsible authorities have either looked at and said, yes, they are good and they're enforceable and they're appropriate, or responsible authorities have in fact suggested, which is in terms of environmental health. And then there's 2 further conditions to tackle the issues around nuisance. So look, we're not here to litigate the other license. We're not here to review that. That isn't under review. That hasn't been reviewed at any point. And we simply cannot speculate what the outcome would be in relation to that. But I just hope that I have explained the situation sufficiently for you members to appreciate. I hope that all this simply will do is for the situation to continue as it is in relation to a premises license that hasn't been reviewed or subject to review, but with more stringent conditions, with less hours, and with the person who actually occupies the building taking legal responsibility for the licensable activities and being accountable if he fails to promote the licensing objectives and comply with the conditions that he's signed up to. So I would submit, looking at it objectively, that this is actually a preferable situation for the tenants, because the alternative is he'll just carry on with the existing license. There'll be a standoff between him and the landlord, but the landlord knows that they can't prevent him from operating under that lease in the manner which he is entitled to under that quiet enjoyment clause. So for all those reasons, I would invite you to grant the application as it now stands. Have I gone over my 20 minutes?
You're just about on it.
Well, there you go. I'm done. So you don't need to.
Is that all the representations being made?
Certainly, yeah. Obviously, there'll be questions, and my client. I don't know whether my client. We'll see how he gets on, but obviously his wife's here to help out if need be. But certainly, yes, that is the application. Thank you.
Okay, we will go to questions from members. So, Councillor Donaldson, do you have any questions?
Sorry, no questions, Chair.
Councillor Locke, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you. Can I ask about, you mentioned waste. What about the collection of waste? What sort of hours will that be done? Because I'm thinking of people in the early hours and things like that.
Waste. Do you want to answer that?
Yes.
Or do you want to answer that? Go on then. There you go. Okay, you want
Hi, Chair. At the moment, so that premise have the company to collect the waste after, the day we operation the premise. But in the process now, so we just like going to signing the contract with the company, so they collect the waste in a certain day of the week, once a week.
once a week. And is there a particular time? Do you know what time they'll be coming?
We don't know, but
4 or 5 o'clock.
4 or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So okay, well that, I mean, if you, I think Councillor Locke, if you're
PM, AM.
PM, I can say that with some confidence. So in terms of that, if you want to restrict the hours that refuse is collected, I certainly don't see anything, perhaps at 8 a.m. to give them a little bit of slack, maybe 7 p.m. I don't think that would be at all unreasonable. There's obviously got to be some leeway. We all know how they don't necessarily turn up when they're supposed to, but certainly that there wouldn't be any issue with the restriction around that.
Okay, and all about deliveries of as well. What sort of times? I know you can't pinpoint it to exact second, but
yeah, there is. Oh, in fact, sorry, forgive me. I do apologise. In actual fact, I've completely missed this. There is actually a condition relating to the waste. I do apologise. I thought that related to deliveries for some reason. That it's presently between 10 and 8. Well, you can make that 7 and 8. So 1900 and 8 a.m. That's condition 6. Again, deliveries. What about deliveries in terms of like? Sorry, can I just clarify this with my client, please? Are you okay? No deliveries after 8 p.m. Is that okay?
No, we don't have any.
Yeah, you're fine with that, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So no, you can mirror that with the deliveries as well as a condition, councillor.
and
So 8 p.m. no deliveries to the premises between 8 p.m. Between 7 p.m. and 8 a.m.
And also, has there been any communication with local community at all? And that's my final question.
Have you been in discussions with any local residents at all? The answer to the question is no, councillor. So 1 second, sorry, what were you saying?
Actually, like all around, we just see, like next door is the game central or something like that. Yeah, we haven't seen, any resident, like apartment. We have no communication with them.
I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of interaction between. Obviously, these representations have been made.
Front of the club, they got the pad thai.
Yeah.
The Chinese owner.
Yeah.
So they very close with me. So okay, they still.
He does have some relations with some local residents, but I wouldn't describe the engagement as intense. No.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Craig.
No more questions, Councillor Locke. Okay. I've got some questions. I was just wondering what type of events will be put on at the if there is a licence granted, what type of events will be put on?
Well, they'll be along the same lines as what's being put on. I mean, based on my visits to the premises, I've been down on a couple of occasions at night. It's principally for Chinese and Vietnamese students in Birmingham. Certainly, when I've been down, pretty much everybody in there has been Chinese or Vietnamese. I think that's, and so it would just be events along those lines. There's certainly no. You don't use external promoters, do you? You just do the events yourself. So that's the type of events, Councillor Brennan.
So is it music, things like DJs?
Yes.
Okay, that's all my questions. So we will now move on to those making representations. So we'll move to the submission from House Birmingham.
Hi there, guys. So we are directly affected by not only the proposed license, but the current license, which we have already submitted new complaints about.
Sorry to interrupt you. Mr. Craig, could you turn your camera off for me, please?
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So our main objection here is with regards to the hours, more specifically the noise that is created.
Are you able to put your camera on at all?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi there. I'll show you what the problem is. Okay. Now, our bedroom is here. Okay. Now the nightclub is here. Okay. Now, at the moment, I can tell you the hours because I can feel it when I'm lying in bed. They're open Saturday and Sunday until 4 a.m. And it is like we are inside the club when we're in the bedroom. It's absolutely unbearable. It's that bad that we can't even sleep in our bedroom. You know, and I appreciate that they're saying that the hours are going to be reduced, but they're not currently even open during the week. So if this was open until 3 a.m. during the week, I mean, it would. I'm sure you can see why we have the concern. The deliveries and the rubbish pales in comparison to the thumping music that, you know, is clearly visible and we can feel it where we actually live. It absolutely is ruining our existence here. That's really it.
Okay, is that all the representations you want to put through?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could experience it, then you would understand what the issue is. You know, my concern is, you know, if they're going to be operating, you know, more than they currently are. I mean, it's already unbearable as it is. I mean, like when I have work at 6 a.m. and all we can hear is thumping bass at 4 a.m. on a Sunday. I mean, that is already unbearable. And you know, they're talking about having hours that allow them to do that until 6 a.m. or during the week. I mean, it's just ridiculous, to be honest.
Okay. I will now go to members' questions, if that's okay. So Councillor Donaldson, do you have any questions?
No, Chair.
Councillor Locke, do you have any questions?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions either. So we'll now, it's still your turn, so we'll now invite you to make a closing submission if there's anything else that you want to say.
Yeah, look, I've got a business myself. My parents are in hospitality. I'm not trying to be on live. I've never complained about anything in my life, but this is unbearable. You know, I'm not suggesting that they lose their license or that, but the hours and the music level is unbearable. This is a residential area. You know, I don't know how they got the license in the first place, but you know, it is, yeah. It's unbearable, and this would make life even more unbearable. I mean, we're at the top floor. If it's that bad here, then God knows what it's like for people on the ground floor here. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for your submission.
No problem.
I will now invite the applicant and their representative to make a closing submission.
Obviously, Mr. Tayara has obviously what he said is obviously he feels he's got significant issues with the premises. There are means for him to tackle that. The position is the premises license presently is authorised till 7 a.m. and my client is operating through that license via the DPS. And so, again, I just stress the point that what is being applied for here is less and means he will have accountability. And if those matters are investigated by environmental health and found to be correct, and I just simply can't comment on that. I've got no means of commenting on it one way or the other. But certainly the position will be if this isn't granted, the situation that he describes is more likely to continue, in fact, than if the license is granted. So, for that reason, if you find, and look, we're not here to deal with the other license, we're here to deal with this application. But this application there's nothing wrong with comparing this proposed license with the existing one. The position with the proposed license is, as I say, it's more restrictive. There are less hours, and more importantly, Mr. Lee will be personally accountable. And if those matters continue, then it will be easier to enforce this license, and it will be easier to regulate if he's taking responsibility for it. So, for those reasons, I obviously don't need to reiterate the rest of my submissions around the company and the ownership of it, etc. I hope I've demonstrated that. Simply, he just wants an opportunity to run the business in a way that's responsible and benefits the Chinese and the Vietnamese community in Birmingham. Somebody got a microphone on. I'm not sure who.
It's Mr. Tiara. Yes, thank you.
And so, if any of the objectors who may be listening, that there are mechanisms to deal with the concerns that you raised, and it's absolutely right that you explore those avenues to you. But the things that Mr. Tiara described today, refusing to grant this application is not going to change any of that. And so, for that reason, I would invite you to grant the application. And if those matters, as he describes, are correct, there are mechanisms to deal with that, but that aren't for this forum. And so I would invite you to grant the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer, the committee manager will go to the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. So thank you everybody for their time today.
Thank you.
Mr. Tiara's got his hand raised, Chair.
Mr. Tiara, do you want to come in?
Yeah, the only point I wanted to make with regards to the license is it's clear that the leaseholder is behaving not in a responsible way already. So having the license in their own name, I can't see how that's going to help anything. It's them that's actually, playing the music at that level, giving them their own license. You say that it's more restrictive, but you're giving someone a license that is already behaving in a way that is, quite frankly, irresponsible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tiara. As I said, I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer, the committee manager will go to the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision, and we will notify all parties of the decision within 5 working days. So I just want to thank everybody for their time this morning.
Chair.
We'll now leave the meeting. Yes.
The other.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Thank you.
So if all parties can now leave the meeting.